everybody. This is Z.S. Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm back for another ZKast episode. And as always, this video podcast is brought to you in conjunction with my media partner, eWEEK. I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Reed-Edwards. Mark, I hope you're keeping okay there in the snow. At least you're not in Texas, didn't lose any power, right?
I know it. It's cool here, but we still have power, which I'm always thankful for.
Yeah. Well, I guess we were prepared for it. So, although I'm in California, so it got cool enough the other day that I had to wear long sleeves. So don't talk to me about roughing it. Yeah, not pants yet, but
after a couple of weeks in Hawaii, you must not know what to do with yourself.
Yeah, I know it's freezing here. So this is Analytics Week, right? So there was a lot of analytic-based announcements, and where do you want to start first?
How about Extreme? You had Norman Rice on just before the Super Bowl, and he hinted at this, but there is an Extreme MLB partnership. How about that?
Yeah, so they announced this week that they are now the official Wi-Fi and, more importantly, the Wi-Fi analytics provider of Major League Baseball. And this adds Major League Baseball to this long roster of sports things that Extreme does. They've also got a partnership with the NFL, as we talked with Norman Rice about. They've been in 8 consecutive Super Bowls. Even Tom Brady hasn't done that. And they also have NASCAR. And so I'm waiting for some swag from Extreme. Maybe I'll get a NASCAR in the mail or something like that. You know, the Wi-Fi is interesting because Wi-Fi is everywhere, but most of what you have is crappy Wi-Fi. And good Wi-Fi, I think, is foundational to digital transformation. You think a retailer is trying to do more stuff in store. In pro sports, I actually the other day talked to Brian Shield, the CIO of the Boston Red Sox, and he was telling me that 2021 will be an interesting year for Major League Baseball because it's the year they're going to try a bunch of stuff. They're going to move to mobile ticketing, right? So because of COVID, they don't want to be handing out paper tickets, so they'll move to digital tickets. They'll try doing in Fenway Park whenever it reopens. You'll be able to order food from your mobile phone and then go pick it up. They'll want to use mobile information to determine which concessions they should have open. Right, so they want to create more. You know, the NHL already uses mobile for proprietary camera angles. We send them the NHL app when you're in stadium, and so more and more of the fan experience is shifting to mobile. In fact, I talked to Jonathan Kraft from the Patriots about this a couple of years ago, where they're trying to create some sort of augmented reality. So when you're in the stands, you know, you can look through your phone like this, see the field, and see the first down marker superimposed, right? Because you don't get that at home. And so in this case, I know what Mr. Shield told me was that this doesn't work if the person's looking at their phone and all they get is a spinning wheel, right? That creates sort of a negative fan experience. And so while Major League Baseball will leverage Extreme's Wi-Fi, and the Red Sox will actually be the first, I guess they traded away Mookie Betts and all their good players, so now we can go ahead and afford some Wi-Fi. But that's another story. And full disclosure, they're my absolute favorite baseball team. I live and die by the Sox. It's been a little boring the last couple of years.
Same here.
You will get an entirely new fan experience there. And while it's important to have Wi-Fi everywhere, the analytics that you get off that data, this is really where Extreme excels. Now, first of all, I do know a number of Wi-Fi providers that have looked at the, obviously there's other ones that it's not just Extreme that does stadiums, but it's a tough, demanding environment. Your exposure level is huge. You see the big, Extreme logo, and if it doesn't work, they're the provider for this terrible experience, or they're the provider of this great experience. So the risk reward here is really high. But Extreme's got a very sophisticated analytics product that can actually help you understand what fans are doing. And that helps you sharpen how you market, right? So if 90% of the fans are posting things to Instagram, well, that becomes your primary marketing channel. If from a demographic perspective, people, over 40 use Facebook, you can target that a little bit better. And so the stuff that people do with their mobile is critically important to the future of entertainment. And that's why Wi-Fi, the providers would like you on Wi-Fi versus having you on like the cellular 5G network where you don't have access to that data. Now, they do. The Sox do have a partnership, a 5G partnership with Verizon, I believe, coming, which will actually bring some element of 5G in. What Brian told me was that a lot of the IoT devices they're putting in, cameras and things like that, are Wi-Fi only. The return to the ballpark, safe experience, is going to be driven largely by Wi-Fi. So congratulations to Extreme for doing this. Wes DeRoe, who's the CMO at Extreme, cut the similar deal for Mitel when he was there. But Norman Rice, from what I understand, was well involved as well, their COO who was on. He's got relationships with NASCAR and the NFL, but he's also got some relationships with the Orioles and teams like that. So this was a good announcement, and shows I think the world of sports is a microcosm of society in a lot of ways, and we're going to see what's possible with mobile based on what these things that baseball and football and NASCAR are building.
Yeah. And this is a good year for MLB to experiment, because they're not going to have a full house anywhere, probably the whole year. So try some things out.
Yeah, and that's the way Brian Shield explained it to me. Is it's the year we're going to try things. We don't really know how these things are going to work until we try them, and so it is a good way. Like the Super Bowl went to all digital because they had to in a way, right? But this lets baseball gradually ease into it, and for a league that's so steeped in tradition and sometimes gets criticized for not changing fast enough, it's I'll give them kudos for doing this.
Speaking of going digital, Google has pushed a lot of schools to go digital really over the last several years, but it really crystallized after the pandemic started, and they've recently updated Classroom, Meet, and a bunch of their Chromebooks.
Google's an interesting company when it comes to collaboration, because they've done an excellent job in education. They've done kind of a terrible job everywhere else. They actually have, if you use the Google Meet suite, it's actually pretty good, right? The video capabilities are good. You can get phones from now if you want to. The chat capabilities are good. The integration, in fact, I think the integration across the Google suite is better than what you get with Microsoft between Teams and SharePoint and Office. That stuff doesn't integrate very well at all. So what they announced here, and education is really where they've excelled, is over 50 updates for Classroom, Meet, and other online educational tools. So, for instance, some of the new features help teachers understand engagement, student engagement with content. So, like who's posted a comment, who submitted assignment. Another new feature lets students use their phone cameras to scan homework and upload photos to turn to teachers. There's an offline mode as well that'll help students do work even when their internet connection isn't reliable. And as we saw in Texas this week with all the power outages, that's actually a big thing. I saw CNN post a low bandwidth site. And I think what happens, the concern I've had with digital education is if you're a child from a wealthy family that lives in Cupertino, California, or Concord, Massachusetts or something, you're going to be fine, right? But if you're in these lower income areas where bandwidth isn't so good, your computers aren't that good, your parents are both essential workers and they're out working, you're likely not going to be fine, right? And so I think what Google's doing is they're helping build tools that can help democratize the educational process. They're also releasing 40 new Chromebook models. These have become really popular in classrooms, especially again, with lower income families that can't afford the $2,000-3,000 MacBook Pro or something like that for their students. They rolled that up. I won't go through all the features, but there was over 50 of them. I think there's more work to be done. I would like to see Google, we talked about the Cisco capabilities of, being able to clap and have it come up on the screen. I think engagement's a very difficult thing to measure, and it's probably the number one challenge that teachers have. I've talked to a lot of teachers. I'm friends with one in one of the Massachusetts towns, and she's very frustrated because you really can't tell if students are engaged or not, right? And so the way Google does it by submitting documents and posting comments is one way, but you could have a student that's very engaged and is nodding or following along. And so an AI should be able to track that. And I think one area that Google has kind of lagged with their meeting product is in the area of AI. And the irony is they build a lot of the AI that the other collaboration vendors are using.
Yeah.
Right. And so for them to kind of be a lagger because they're falling behind the other vendors that use their tools is completely ironic to me. So it's a good start for Google. I'll give them kudos because they've done more for the educational industry than any other tech vendor out there, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Just the technology that they've made available en masse to so many people is pretty astounding.
I think we will look back at the Chromebook almost as the savior of digital education. If every student had to go out and buy even like a low-end Windows laptop, it would be cost prohibitive. Chromebooks you can get for a couple $100, and frankly, they do everything the student needs to do, and you get a great experience off them.
PaloAlto Networks is a company I've known for quite a while, and they've been super successful, and they have acquired a DevOps startup, and that kind of blending of security and DevOps is a trend that goes back a couple of years. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, now you may be watching this going, hey, I thought this was Analytic Week. Why are you talking about Palo Alto and DevOps? There is an analytic angle to this. They actually do a lot of sophisticated analytics. But first, if you don't understand, if you don't know, didn't see the news, Palo Alto Networks acquired a company called Bridgecrew Technology out of Israel for 156 million in cash. As you mentioned, it is a DevOps company, and it lets developers build security right into the applications. And so this concept of security of code becomes part of that. Now, Bridgecrew, it's not a very big company. They're pretty small, which is very consistent with Palo Alto acquisition of doing tuck-ins. But they've developed a security as code platform that actually can look at data and identify and automatically fix cloud infrastructure misconfigurations, both in runtime and build time. And that can save developers a tremendous amount of money, right? So there are a lot of security as code vendors where I can build widgets into it and things like that. But the ability to analyze the stuff in real time, at runtime, through the data that it sees and the those kind of machine learning based analytic capabilities is really powerful. And given this huge focus we've had at work from home on moving to more and more cloud-based apps, this shift left security that we've had going on is shifting left even faster. And so developers don't want to wait until runtime to find out their security is not working, right? I mean, that's you're always reacting in that case. And so what Bridgecrew does is it lets them react beforehand or even in real time when things aren't working. So Palo Alto has been on an acquisition tear. They're almost what Cisco was to networks, back in the early 2000s. They have revved up that acquisition engine. They do it really well, and this is a great acquisition for them to help them bridge the gap from security to development.
That whole area is kind of converging, right? And it's interesting to just see how a company like Palo Alto is taking advantage of that.
Yeah, well, we talked about the integration of network and security a couple of weeks ago, and now we're seeing DevOps and development and security. And I think because there's so much intense focus on work from home and all these new security risks, we're seeing security really become not just technology, but almost like this ubiquitous thing that's being integrated into everything. Right?
So Microsoft has a browser. It's not Internet Explorer, it's Edge, and they've recently updated it, and it has some interesting features.
Yeah, Edge, I don't know what to say about Edge and Microsoft. It's funny, Netscape was the leader in browsers, and Microsoft came and stuck their foot on their throat and killed them. And since then, they haven't really done anything innovative, right? So Google came along and Safari came along and killed them. And but Edge, this was a pretty cool innovation. And so for those of you who didn't see the news, the one thing that plagues people working on computers is these stupid, annoying pop-ups that you get from your browser every 2 seconds. It seems like I get a CNN pop-up, I get a Google pop-up. There's all these pop-ups coming, and generally you don't even read them, right? You ignore them, you hit ignore, you hit block or whatever. So what Microsoft has done with Edge is they've taken the data based on what people are reading, what they're blocking, what they're accepting, what they're not accepting, and they're actually predicting what it is you would like. And so they will actually suppress a lot of those pop-ups that come up based on the crowd, right? So this is crowdsourced pop-up blocking, I guess, in a way. Not really pop-up, but those notification systems, right? That you get those notifications that come up. And so, as I said, Microsoft hasn't done a lot of things right with Edge. I think they kept the IE around too long as well, and so they had these parallel things. But this is a pretty cool feature. It's a way of using the power of their crowd to actually improve the performance of the browser, and that could persuade people perhaps to that maybe get tired of it with Chrome to take another look at Edge. But I do think it's an interesting way of using analytics and crowdsourced data to help a larger group of people.
It's kind of like real artificial intelligence, right? It's real people and their intelligence kind of pooled together.
Yeah, it's not quite human in the loop, because there's not a human in the middle there, but it's based off real-time data. So it's not artificially generated, GANs and things like that. It's actually, real life data being used, and that's pretty cool. So anyways, Mark, that brings us to the end of our time. It's been another busy week in tech. We'll be back next week with another episode of ZKast. So until then, see you then. Thanks for joining me.